Well, here we are then in Kinlochleven for the 2002 Pre-65 Scottish Trial, and I'm joined once again by Colin Dommett. Colin, fantastic weather again. We're really lucky with this event.
That's for sure. I think if last year had run, it would have been 5 consecutive years of great weather. Certainly nice to see.
And here we are then. The start for the Friday trial is at the Aluminium Works in Kinlochleven. We've just seen Sammy Miller there, and quite a nice entry of Greaves and a very unusual machine we're just about to see. 50cc Kreidler, was it?
Yes, I did see that there around the start area, but didn't see it any further. I don't know how far it made it.
Well, it was a bit of a wailing banshee up Pipeline. But here we start the action, and
this looks like Loch Isle Burn. It is. There's that.
And there is that Kreidler.
Coming towards us now is two Shores from Holland. Great supporter of some British classic trials. We've seen him over here quite often, and always a big smile on his face.
Next rider through, number 31, Michael Hans.
Yeah, a German riding an MV Augusta. Real unusual machine, but beautiful sounding.
33 through next. That's Johan Sels. Got a few continental riders in the event. Is from Hammelburg, Germany.
I think, in fact, there were 36 foreign entries. I think perhaps one or two didn't make it to the start, but a fair old turnout.
And 35, Dick Lambretts, I think that's pronounced, Netherlander.
Clive Dobson this time on that 500T Norton. Extremely good rider is Clive, and a bit of a masochist, I think, riding a rigid machine around the moors of around Kinlochleven.
Certainly. Isn't it well prepared, that bike, though? It always looks fantastic.
But what would you expect from a Lotus engineer?
Well, he told me at one stage he was going to engage traction control, but I don't think there'll be any problem finding traction with the rear wheel of that. 43 is Alan Ferguson.
A local man there. BSA, I would have thought, yes indeed, a B40, but didn't pick the number in that instant.
I don't think I've seen so many immaculate B40s as there were up there this year. There's some fantastic looking machinery.
Pete Carson now with his James, which is very much a replica of Mick's machine. Another Derbyshire rider, that Peter.
Number 15, Stuart Brown.
Stuart actually lives in France, very much an Englishman, but lives in the south of France.
53, Georges Gillet on a 200 Zundap.
I didn't actually set eyes on that machine. I would like to have done, but 51 there, Claude Clotain. You certainly started off with a load of our overseas visitors, Colin.
We certainly have, haven't we?
45 is Henry Martin from Belgium with a 300cc Gillet.
Big aerial, that's similar to the machine you were riding yourself, Colin?
Yes indeed, there's several of them about. Back to the favourite now, Unit BSA there. Looking at the bike, not the number, I'm afraid.
Right, we've moved up from Lochiel Burn and we're on Lochiel Path here. Again with the odd numbers. The evens have split and they've gone out on the Glencoe Road out from Kinlochleven, but we'll see plenty of those competitors a little later on.
Several of the riders got their backpacks on with carrying a few spares. Obviously way out on the moors, if you pick up a puncture, there's no AA man about. Jock McComiskey now. Jock very much involved with the organisation there with his 350 Triumph Twin. He absolutely loves the event and loves Scotland, works very hard at it.
But for once, they're not actually talking to it, because he tends to give it a commentary all the way around, doesn't he?
Yes, I have heard that at times.
Another of the Continental contingent, rider from France.
On a rigid again. Like I say, brave men. We're near the top of Lochall Path now. In fact, this was possibly the hardest sub of Lochall Path.
But that view down there, that is what summarises the Scottish, isn't it, really?
That's for sure. Arthur Dovey, riding one of George Greenland's Wasp Triumph Twins, just appeared over the top, who was going quite well until well into the second day when he clobbered a rock and the rock won.
Number 51 coming through, Claude Courtain.
This is number 49, Headley Cockshot, who I think took over one of the foreign non-starter entries. Unusual for Headley to get a couple of dabs like that up there. A very capable Yorkshire rider.
Yes, and he lost 13 on observation on Friday, which quite high for Headley.
And 2 there, so he must have been riding quite well in other places.
'63 was Harry Randall. He's been a competitor in the Pre-65 a number of times.
And that looks like the other John Gaskell on just come down. Here's Mick Ash, clearly no mistake in the style there. Mick, British, Sammy Miller, British bike champion on numerous occasions. Mick, not the greatest lover of the big rocks, but there he is. Here's Jock, this time giving it the bit of verbals. It's one of our Spanish visitors there, although off the hand I can't quite remember. We ought to
Ramon Sales.
Well done, fella.
Oh, he obviously wants to go back down to Kinlochleven. Could be a long day.
Somebody took the wrong turning there completely. Missed the right-hander. This looks like a fellow I know. Certainly recognise the bike. Blackie Holden there coming up. His familiar TT Leathers jacket. And this is another bike I know quite well, piloted by my son Scott. No troubles there.
Is that Arthur Lampkin in the background on the right hand side there, I see?
Certainly could, well, it looks a little bit like it. Arthur was about that number.
And 97 is Peter Baldwin on a 500 aerial.
Here comes Blackie with that little James of his. Blackie with a familiar collar and tie as well, no problem.
Yes, that's Arthur Lampkin coming through.
On XON 688, the actual C15 he won the Scottish on back in the 60s. And this could well be Mick Wilkinson with the 197 Francis Barnett. Another very, very famous Yorkshire rider.
Number 61 who's just gone through, that was Frederic Marchal, Frenchman.
Very tidy looking aerial there in white malloy. This is quite steep up here actually, as I'm sure you're aware, Colin, but
Well, it's a long time since I walked up there. I send other people these days.
Mark Weston then with the James that was originally the machine ridden by Mick Andrews. But then there's Mick himself. Mick, who went on to stay clean throughout the trial, which was an absolutely amazing feat.
Brian Cottrell there, another previous winner of the event.
And Brian, in fact, was another one who took a late entry right at the last minute, I think, but thoroughly enjoyed his 2 days. Chris Denny, from down in Worcestershire. Getting his sums right. He is an accountant, but a 0 there.
Steve Ransom that was, and Steve was riding a 250 Francis Barnett, and then rode the 6 days a couple of days later on the only air-cooled machine in the event.
Steve, of course, is the son of Mick Ransom, who was riding as well.
Right, we've swapped over. We're now at Knockallini, and well tricky they were to start with. It looked absolutely nothing, but it was catching all sorts of people for some marks.
I'm sure early numbers, those places like that are very, very slippery.
It's Paul Walsh there, just finding out how tricky it is. Looks like Colin Smith, I think, coming through now.
Yes, indeed. Oh, and he's stopped.
Wasn't to be Colin's weekend, I think. Was it machine problems put him out?
I hadn't realised he'd retired, actually, but
perhaps he hadn't. Malcolm Simmons, I think, number 26. 2 Speedway riders on the trot, and we've got Barry Briggs coming through next, so almost at a full grid lineup here, I think.
Is indeed. 67 years old and attacking his first Scottish. Amazing. What a great rider he's been over the years, and a great ambassador for motorcycling.
Alan Shorter, number 28 on his 350 AJS.
These 2 subs at the bottom of Knockallini, to the best of my knowledge, we've not used them before. As you said, they were tricky. There we got the face of Dave Thorpe and Graham Watkin, I think it was, beside him.
Yes, it was. But Thorpe riding number 2, but he's not going through here for 5 minutes or so.
Dave Fremantle now on C15 BSA. Dave in his heyday used to be an Enfield Crusader man, and then his compatriot Dick Rampley riding one of George Greenland's aerials. In fact, the machine I rode a couple of years ago. Well done, Dick. Looked good ride there. Dave Jones with a beautiful aerial. Dave very, very good on rocks. Very slow. Look. Oh, did he? He did have a dab at the corner, you see, but nice machine.
Malcolm Smith on a Tiger Cub. It seems as if we sent all the continental riders one way, all the homegrown lads another, because there's a couple of Yorkshire men, should I say.
Yes, Eric Bucott and Mick Grant together there. Eric went on to have a very good ride. That looked like Paul Edwards on another very tidy aerial, who was not without its problems during the course of the weekend. But remember, these machines are stem from 40 to 50 years ago, that they're not exactly brand new.
Oh, there's plenty of footwear getting broken in on this section as well. Number 64, that's Tim Britton on a 150 Excelsior.
Gerard Kane, number 62, riding a Cub. Gerard's the editor of the Classic Motorcycle magazine. But here he is testing one of his subjects.
Martin Adams struggling there. I'd surprised to see him drop a 5 there. '58 is Bob Baker.
Looks like Julian Wigg also in big trouble there.
Good job his lad's not there to watch him. He'd be telling him what to do. He's got a very useful young son, as Julian. Alex Wigg. Watch out for his name over the next few years. Joel Carroy, number 6.
Joel, the original manufacturer of the JCM trials bike, but a very, very capable rider in his own right.
Only going to lose 1 today on observation.
There's someone wearing a very traditional barber's type jacket.
Eddie Bull from Tamworth in the West Midlands. Eddie is a speedway engine tuner by trade, and that bike of his was absolutely immaculate, as you'd expect from an engineer.
Edward Hoy with a 500T Norton there, battling his way up through.
Now this is one of the Scottish contingent, John Innes on a 350 Enfield. I think he's a traffic cop by profession.
So there was a couple of policemen actually taking part in that token.
Still taking marks. It's not settled down just yet, has it, this section?
I'm quite surprised actually. It didn't appear too difficult when we actually rode it, but I can see this is so often the case on some of the Scottish streams.
It's like Mick Driffield.
Well, that was an amazing ride. Mick with a rigid James 3-speeder with little spindly forks, and here comes his daughter, Jill. Jill rode very, very well all weekend. Missed 2 years ago when she'd broken a leg playing football, but back and riding as well as ever. Is this Eric Bucock?
That's
I
Eric,
think it is.
yes. I think he's only been riding pre-65 for a few years, hasn't he? And he certainly takes it seriously.
Well, I think he's Graham Watkin, I must comment. Graham, very neat and stylish rider. Nice, very original AJS. Just a quick one there, but hanging on. The master of plonk almost, but the greatest of that was Hugh Viney, who rode a 350 AJS like that and was many times winner at the Scottish. Here's Mick Grant, who only had a 1 for the day on Friday, but then unfortunately was not able to start on the Saturday as he had some road racing commitments to keep up with, so I believe.
Number 72 is Andrew Buchanan. I wonder if Mick's going to be one of those guys that never quite manages to win the pre-65. Well, he's very keen, isn't he? But
he's very keen, and he deserves to win in so many ways. But you've got some very, very experienced trialsmen there. Let's face it, Mick principally is a road racer. Now comes Dave Thorpe. Unfamiliar riding attire, that's for sure, but the same Thorpe. He's got a new helmet, but look at that. Anybody could tell who that was from 100 yards distance, I would have thought.
Richard Thorpe, the PJ1 Oils man, who's riding around with Eric Bucock and Eddie Bull, and big friends with Mick Grant as well, and they're quite a little Yorkshire clique who really enjoy their pre-65.
Pete Remington now with the Tiger Cub. Pete rode a lovely Hardy Triumph Twin a couple of years ago, but he's reverted to the Cub this time.
Joan Westbrook. Right, now we've a real change of section across the other side of the hills.
Oh,
And this could well be Lochiel Moor, I think.
indeed, you're right, Colin. This is Lochiel Moor, and we're in the second half. That looks like Steve Ransom with James. Francis Barnett, I should say. I beg your pardon.
Brian Cottrell again. This section looking as if it's perhaps not going to take quite so many marks.
No, I think it was perhaps a little easier, although in the early part of it a big rock rolled in just wrong, and the only way was over it.
We've seen Steve Ransom, but that was Mick Ransom, I think, who finished pretty well. Number 111 just going through, John Tye on a 340 BSA. Comes from Matlock, so home of Mick Andrews.
John, a very capable rider in his own right, but more familiar with fighter aircraft, I believe.
Number 61, that's Frederick Marshall. Tony Sullivan.
Tony Sullivan with his nice Machi. Oxfordshire enthusiast, as keen on his trials as he is in classic scrambles. Been riding for lots of years. Also with him there is Ken O'Brien. Ken, another one from the same area. Couldn't quite catch that number.
I think it was 109. It looked like a Fantic tank on that. I don't know whether it was, or perhaps not. Number 115, Derek Carson. Graham Andrews from Ipswich, so I don't think they have too many rocky streams in Ipswich.
There's nothing could be further apart than Charles territory from East Anglia to Scotland, that's for sure. Carl Bancroft coming here, Midlander. Carl, I think, took over a non-starter's number.
Usually riding a BSA, very often to be found on a Royal Enfield. Brian Irwin, I think that was.
Big Brian Irwin rode extremely well throughout the 2 days and went on to take the new Nick Nichols over 60s award. Great ride from Brian. We're now at Coles Nacoan, which is a very steep climb and was certainly in a tricky mood there on Friday.
Yeah, the sections that were used both days, weren't they, Colin? Were they identical on both days?
Yes, Coles Nacoan was indeed exactly the same on both days, yes. I think the very top sub did have a slight modification. Colin Smith, it looks like from here.
That cub doesn't want to go up there today.
Like I said, that is extremely steep, and there's an angled step there that you needed to float over, really. 40 Malcolm Smith on a cub from Skipton in Yorkshire. There's one of those fighter planes going over that frightened the observer to death a couple of years ago, I believe.
Yes, I was there when it happened, and but on both occasions the riders have taken absolutely no notice and concentrated on the section.
Here's Brigo legging his way up there. Oh, just backed it off a bit too much and stalled. Is this Paul Edwards? Certainly looks like it. Paul went on to complete the first day for 2 marks lost and was well in the frame. And there's one of them. Now that's a surprise up there. He got over the worst of it. Jared Kane again there.
Next man through, Steve Maxwell.
Dick Rampley looking on there. Dick, a former British sidecar enduro champion. This is the first time that he's got into the Pre-65 Scottish. There's Dave Jones.
Looking very determined there.
Going very well indeed, I would have said. But Dave just loves the rocks, and for a
Kiss of
Kentish man.
Yes, another area they probably wouldn't see too many sections that look anything like this. It was Ken Gummerson who decided to throw the bike up before he made an appearance.
Here's Dick blasting the aerial up in bottom gear. Choosing not to go over the step, going around it, which made the next left-hander quite tight, but he's kept it going.
So what was the trick, Colin, to get right out to the right-hand side before that left-hand turn?
But that meant climbing over a fairly high angled step, but that was the line chosen by several.
This is John Moffat, who's in for a busy week. He's riding the Pre-65 and now he's secretary of the 6 days, and it's his first year in the office, so he must be hoping he doesn't do anything to fall off and hurt himself this weekend.
Well, there's a lot of enthusiasts put a lot of time into both trials, and all credit to them. They put on a super sporting holiday in the Highlands, which is what it's all about.
Yes, the bike that John was riding there, I think he lent to Gordon Jackson to ride the Sunday parade preceding the 6 days.
Oh, that was rather nice, and nice to see Gordon up there. It's over 40 years since his one dab ride, but certainly nice to see Gordon and several other of his contemporaries about at the start and at one or two of the sections.
It's Mike Tizard. Mick Driffield again. Sounds a real soft little motor he's got there.
Jill coming up now with a slightly more powerful one, and certainly better sprung. Is that Martin Adams?
It looks like it to me.
Yeah, those long legs. Martin, very much a engineer in Cubs and aerials. Nicely turned out bike.
Well, in the programme that was Stan Cordingley, but that is not, I think, Stan.
No mistake in this man, Len Hutty. It'll be good to watch. There he goes over that step, no problem. Off to the left. Len from down in the southeast, but a very capable rider in every part of the UK.
And he's come pretty close on this event once or twice, hasn't he?
Yes. And there's Joan Westbrook just doing one more Scottish.
Oh, she says that every year and still comes back and puts in a real good effort.
Yes, indeed she does, and I hope she'll keep coming for years to come.
Evan Wilcox was number 56. There they are again. The Richard Thorpe, Eric Bucock, Edward Hoy on a 490 Norton.
That's a 500T that we saw earlier.
The man who won the event in the year 2000, Stig Carlson.
Stig was hoping to ride a BSA this time to have made 3 different bikes in 3 consecutive Classic Scottishes, but had difficulty in registering the C15, so he came back with that nice matchless of his. Dave Thorpe with his very standard looking cub. Dave, still a very, very capable rider.
Would lose 3 marks on the day.
Tall man there, Gary Mitchell on an aerial. Neil Gaunt, son of the very famous Peter Gaunt, riding Andy Johnson's 350 Enfield and enjoying the experience. Neil, another one who went on to ride the main Scottish as well.
Eddie Bull once again. This is his first visit to the Scottish, but he's been up Yorkshire practicing. He knew what was going to be coming, so he made the trip from his West Midlands home a few times.
In some ways here, Colin, you've got a better view of the severity of the section looking up at it above that step that I was talking about earlier. This is Frank McMullen from Manchester.
Eric Bucock, I think. Yes, that looks like Eric.
And what a good ride from Eric.
Nothing wrong with that, was it? Just had it all nicely lined up.
Here's Grant Tate. Oh! That was that's his one dab for the day. Now he must have been really disappointed with that, because that certainly wasn't the hardest section of the day. And
Richard Thorpe coming up next. Richard would finish in 18th place overall after the 2 days and was well happy with that. Maurice Newsham. Got to be on a Greaves, hasn't he?
I think it's
No,
a
he
James.
isn't.
Yeah, it's one of the. I was going to say Mick Andrews replica James. Here's Peter Gaunt. Now there's an unusual machine, a side valve 250 BSA, a C10, and a rigid at that. But Peter, a man who's shown a lot of ingenuity in the manufacture of trials bikes over the years, and probably was the one who invented the clockwork mouse that sort of was seen in the very late 60s and early 70s.
Now we've swapped back across the hill, and I think we're at Milner Crudy.
Right, that's right. Right, possibly the furthest distance out. Paul Edwards up with that aerial.
These are the sections you won't get to see unless you're going to take an awful long walk, I think.
You'd be walking for a long time.
Yeah, I know there was a reason I went down the road to watch the other sections. Let the lads go out and film this bit for me. So thank you to Richard Gill and Graham Archer, who are responsible for getting out there on the moors.
Number 8, Roland Sligger on a Sprite, actually, down as a 350 BSA. Now that could well have been a substitute rider. Don't know. 167 there, Pat Coolan from Ireland on a Cub. No David McBride this year. Now that's got to be first time for a long time that we've not seen that famous Irishman in action in Scotland.
And now back with Gary Mitchell, who we saw up Colin-Ascowan. We'll check some of the other numbers through that section. And now we have moved up from the bottom sub at Colesnacoan. I'd say I pronounce this differently every time I mention it.
Colesnacoan, so I'm told. I had specific Scottish elocution lessons over the Easter holiday, Colin, so I've had an advantage over you.
You can't beat those electrocution lessons, can you really? Number 170, John Palmer. I think I've got the pronunciation right this time. So these were two continuous subs, weren't they? The bottom one, which was the toughest, and if you got through that, this was perhaps a little easier.
Yes, I think that's a fair comment. So John Kendall there taking a good look. John from Colchester in Essex, and like I said, another area not too many rocks to cut with. This looks like Salty. Peter Salt with an absolutely gleaming Francis Barnett.
Is he a director of Solvo Auto, Peter Salt? Or?
He must have shares in it. That was beautiful. Mick Mills now. Big Mick Mills with that BSA. What would have been a development bike in his day. Mick, very much a motor engineer.
Another famous son and a famous father.
Yes, Nick Draper. Another very, very capable rider. But we'll have to go some to match the successes of his very famous father, John. John, the only rider to have won every capacity cup in the Scottish 6 days. And won the trial as well, of course.
This is the third of the subs. Go on, tell me what the section was called again.
Colesnacoan.
Right. Mick Whitlow. Triumph Twin. Triumph Twins must be difficult to ride round on the Scottish rockery.
I would think so, but there's several up there, and nice to see, and certainly nice to hear.
There's one guy we haven't seen yet who is always riding a Triumph Twin. Is John Kendall, a man you mentioned a little earlier. He always goes exceptionally well up here.
There's a last man, number 180, Andy Abraham. 180 entries, but in fact I think there were approaching 400 entries received. What a job the organisers got to sift that lot out.
Clive Tompkinson. I mean, the thing was, though, they'd got 180, but there wasn't really much in the way of queuing, was there, Colin? They could have almost have taken 200, I would have thought. I know it's political, but...
Well, I certainly agree, with the exception of a little bit of delay at Pipeline, which there was virtually no delay anywhere. They have really got that job sorted with the odds going one way and evens going another, and it levels the job out in so many ways.
Yes, I suppose there is nothing you can do about queuing up pipeline. It's just going to happen. If you've got all three subs in, that is. But if you take the top one out, it makes the bottom two quite easy, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed. I think it was right to have all three subs in, but they needed to keep off a particular part of the hillside for environmental reasons, and that did cause a little bit of a hold up, but nothing too serious. Here's John Kendall, another very, very well engineered motorcycle, 350 twin, but lots of personal engineering gone into that one, and ridden superbly by John.
He always looks neat and compact, doesn't he, John, when you watch him ride?
Totally, totally.
Les Matten on a 200 Triumph.
Robin Powderly, another Irishman. Philip Nelson.
Yes, that's Philip.
Didn't sound like a Tiger Cub first. Yes, it did. I heard a two-stroke a minute ago, but that was obviously on the sidelines.
And a proper Cub tank on it as well.
Yes, there's a variety of tanks seen about, but as you say, a genuine Cub tank there. Matthew Neal, that's a nice looking Cub. Oh, Matthew doing a bit of modern day stuff.
I was going to say
there.
that looks a little bit of modern riding. And the lunar landscape. This must be Dulochen, is it?
Yes, that's it. Dulochen, which is right in under the Blackwater Dam. It's Dick Rampley. And Dave Fremantle. These pair have great fun riding together in whether it be trials or classic scrambles. They're always doing battle. Unfortunately, Dave Fremantle couldn't complete the second day through a health problem, but normally this pair have great battles and a lot of fun.
Eugenio Gatti from Milan. My Italian pronunciation is even worse than my Scottish, but I do apologise if it's wrong.
I expect you did better than I would have done, but
Mick Whitlow from Rochdale. And then Dudley Robinson from Bingley. Taking it very slow and measured.
well, these sections were not quite as difficult as they looked. It's as you said, like a lunar landscape. Now here's Tony Calvert. Tony riding John Holmes Tiger Cub. Turned in a good ride a couple of years ago on this bike. This time entered on a Triumph Twin, but Tony towering over that little Cub and remained clean on the first day, together with Mick Andrews, and went on to record a superb second day of just 3 dabs and end up runner-up. Tony, a rider who's rode works machines for several different factories in the 70s.
Yes, there was only 2 cleans on the Friday, so was it just a little bit tougher than normal, the course?
Perhaps just a little bit. Of course, there was a top sub of pipeline in, which is not usually in on a Friday, and there were 2 new sections at Ban Beg, which were quite tricky as well. Or certainly they were difficult to get in and out of. There were several cleans actually recorded on it. But as you showed earlier, Knockallini wasn't easy by any means either.
I think these are the sections you were just mentioning at Bian Beg, or Bean Bag, for what?
Bain Beg, I think. There's that man Rampley again. My God, he's...
So whether us following him or him making sure that he got seen plenty on camera.
You'll certainly be able to nail them for a copy of the video, Colin.
Oh, Mick Whitlow just... I don't know whether that's front spindle was out or not. I think he's hoping the observer will take pity on him.
This was very, very steep, actually. And the exit across the hillside was very, very tricky. But nevertheless, good section.
Nice to have a couple of new ones that you don't know how they're going to ride, and just makes you think a little bit more, I suppose.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
John Wilson, Glaswegian, so quick 100-mile trip from his hometown.
Is that Peter Salt? Yes.
Now we're going to have a little look at Pipeline. We'll see more of that tomorrow, but we'll concentrate mainly on the bottom two subs here, and then on Saturday we'll get to the top with the cameras. I think I was just feeling lazy at this point, but there was a lot of spectators there, and as always, plenty of action.
Yes, without question, a classic hill that, as you said, draws a lot of spectators, and it still takes a lot of cleaning, and is very satisfying if you do get it clean.
That was Rob Petit from the Netherlands. Oh, here's the Kreidler man. This thing just howled up here until it stopped. Oh, we won't worry about going the wrong side of the cards there, because it doesn't matter in a minute.
Didn't need too much in the way of throttle control with that one, did you? I think we better turn Mick Andrews out on that one next year, the handicap.
I'd be intrigued to see him ride it up there, but I wouldn't put it past him.
No, because Mick certainly can ride any motorcycle and get the best out of it. That's Mick now must be some 57, 58 years old and still riding absolutely superbly.
This is John Nicol. Is that Francis Barnett?
With an original tank too. That's rather nice to see. Oh, here's Magical Mick.
Psychology, jogging up Pipeline.
Could be, but as I said, a man who can ride any motorcycle and get the best out of it. Still an amazing rider. Worth watching. Oh, a pleasure to watch, shall I say. And he thoroughly enjoys it. He was totally relaxed the whole weekend. Clive Dobson there with that 500T doing an extremely good job. Can't quite see what his feet are doing now, but he's still making forward progress, and that's no mean feat, I can tell you.
Oh, it looks as if he might have just stopped for the ends card. This is one of the younger riders, Alan Winter, on a 250 DNW, and one chain that decided to jump off the sprockets. How infuriating that must be. Peter Mitchell. Son Duncan is riding number 7 in the 6 day. This pipeline, though, that nobody ever talks about any other section when they get back, do they? It's just, oh, I got out of pipeline or I cleaned pipeline. Doesn't matter what they did the rest of the trial.
I think it's fair to say that there are several that, if they've had a good ride on pipeline, that can make their weekend. Having said that, there are some very famous riders that have lost it on pipeline at times too. So
Now, are you actually looking at the second section or having a breather?
probably having a breather, but in fact I didn't even quite recognise myself for a minute. Here's Mick. No hurry, just picking his way up, just as he did throughout the trial. One spectator described his ride on an extremely hard section, probably the hardest one of the weekend. Is I said, how did Mick go over? And she said, like a pussycat. And there's Jill breathing a sigh of relief. This looks like John Gaskell, would it be?
Yes, I think so. We've just dropped down off pipeline to the
Aluminium
two
Works.
subs at Aluminium Works with a... It's got that nasty ending, hasn't it, Colin, this one?
Yes, although I don't think it was quite as hard this year as sometimes. Quite a gallery of stars there. There was Gordon Jackson, Ron Langston, Peter Fletcher, to name a few, spectating there on Friday. Gordon Blakeway was another. John Solch from Germany. Johann Solch, I should probably get a bit better. Here's George Greenland, Evergreen George, just short of his 70th birthday, but going very well. Again, a former British Sidecar Enduro champion and a contender for the British Sidecar Trials title back in the 70s. Rode a Trial Twin for much of his career, but in the last few years has been out on an Aerial HT and has given him a fresh lease of life, and in fact he rides almost every weekend. Mick Ash with that very, very competitive aerial as well. Mick surprised me when he said that it's not his favourite event. He says it's a good trial, but it is not where he rides at his best. Well, this is me on the aerial this time, and I think I was riding a bit too slowly. Certainly trying to take it comfortably, but I fell on my ear any time now, I would think. Yes, indeed, off big time, right in front of that gallery.
Well, somebody phoning it through. Must have been front page news.
Jeff Ward was another spectator there. Jeff Ward, former British Scrambles champion back in the 50s. Big burly Jeff up in Scotland for second visit.
Andy Bamford,
our page one man, adorned the cover of the programme, Andy. And to use his own words, he said when he saw that he should have gone home again. Here's Mick.
Now I knew he was doing all right at this point because somebody went, how's it going, Mick? And he said, steady. Well, that means only one thing in Mick's parlance, I think. Steady means brilliant, I think.
And that looked like Knockalooney, did it?
No. Camas-na-Muick, this is.
Camas-na-Muick, yes, I can see it is now. Peter Carson with a James that's similar to Mick's.
These were a tricky little pair, weren't they?
Ken O'Brien, that was, with Malachi. There's Headley Cockshot, number 49. Yes, that's fair comment. They were Here's Jock McConaughey. As I said before, Jock and his contemporaries have been up there all week. Tony Sullivan. Yeah, Jock and Andy Johnson and Alex and so on had been up there all week. You caught a glimpse then of South West Centre man Ivan Pridham spectating. Great rider for many, many years. Brian Irwin again in his C15.
Well, he has a really good ride on Pipeline the following day, although he almost got some traction off my left foot.
Well,
It's you
back
again.
camera shot again. I think this time perhaps I did manage to keep my feet up, if I remember rightly.
I thought if I didn't sort of put this one in, you might not speak to me for the rest of the tape. So, but nothing wrong with that, Colin.
I got a little flutter anyway.
Grant Miller.
Another Scottish rider.
Edward Dobson.
Oh yes. From the Lake District, so should be fairly familiar with the rocks. Angus Jenkinson with a Enfield.
Now this was the guy who ended up in 5th place, and I think fair to say he was perhaps not so well known as many of the people riding up there.
I would think that's very true. I certainly hadn't come across him before, but then I don't ride in the north of England very much.
And
But-
Harvey Nixon just going through there.
All credit to Angus there.
Norman Pickles, I think.
Norman Pickles, the oldest competitor. I'm not quite sure, but certainly older than George Greenland. But another one who keeps saying it's the last time, but keeps coming back. That's Stuart Brown with that little 197 Gulier, which has in fact got a Villiers engine. Woip van der Kooi from Holland. Another BSA V40. Completed the section, but then there was a tight turn after the ends card to get out.
Well, that was a bit Henry Martin just deciding to
Bit of a sudden stop, wasn't it?
yeah,
But
just a bit.
those rocks are so slippery that that's the way it can happen ever so easily.
John Miller bringing our look at the sections on Friday to a halt, and back at Aluminium Works. Been a good day, but you've got to do it all over again tomorrow, Colin. Some of the sections the same, some different.
Yes, but it hasn't been too bad today. I'm sure that should go well. There's the Gaunt family, Neil and Peter.
Oh, that looks more like it.
Jock taking on a little sustenance. Mick Andrews there assisting with that Spanish rider, whose name I can't grab straight away, but Mick
Good to see him
helping out.
involved here. Time to discuss who did what and where, but Mick Andrews would remain clean, as did Tony Calvert. Joel Carroy was on 1 mark loss, Len Hutty was on 2, Barry Husband was on 3, Dave Thorpe was on 3, Peter Salt, he was on 4, Angus Jenkinson, who we saw just before the close of the first day, He was on 7 marks lost. And we'll move across from the start at Aluminium Works to Schoolhouse. And another bright sunny day. I don't know what we do to deserve this, Colin, but it's good stuff.
Well, it's always an enjoyable event, but obviously it makes it so much more enjoyable when you can just stand around and chat with your associates, because there's plenty to talk about. And there's an unusual looking little bantam.
Yes, that was number 149. That's Mark Daniel, who apparently only finished the bike a couple of days before the event and had never ridden rocks before in his life. We'll see him a couple of times today. But, this is something new as well for 2002. They'd put a little starting plinth up there, hadn't they? And I think that just made it a little bit nicer, called the riders up.
Yes, it bit more continental style, but nice sponsorship from Push Silkaleen as well, which gives them a bit of coverage, and we appreciate their support. Blackie Holden up on that starting ramp. There was 2 at a time, all done even, one going one way and one going the other. First man away today was number 90. And like I said, they started in pairs from then on. The first 90 going on the tail end of the entry.
Well, I think John Moffat wants to have a race against Mick Andrews. Well, I think you might come off second best there, John, if you did. So it's over to Colin Dommett and some interviews.
This is your update Scottish, and I think about your third pre-65. How's it going for you?
Oh, not so bad. A bit warm.
But the bike's looking good and sounding good. On for a good day today?
Oh, yes, I hope so. If it's a good, nice weather, it makes me feel good. It's about all.
Know that you first came to the Highlands. You're back again watching the pre-65. Is it the same sort of atmosphere that it's always been?
Well, everybody loves the Scottish Six Day, and in '53, coming over from Belfast, it was the ultimate to ride in the Scottish Six Day, the world's premier trial. I came over with the SHS, my own little bike that I had built, especially got it ready for the Scotland. Got the boat from Belfast to Glasgow, rode from Glasgow to Edinburgh, started in Edinburgh. Everything I had for the week was on my back, not too many underpants and clothing like that. Rode the whole week, tools a lot, and luckily enough got the best newcomers, the Ben Nevis Trophy on the little SH. At the finish of the trial, then rode it back to Glasgow and got the boat home.
And beside me is Barry Briggs, former World Speedway champion and many other championships. Turned out for trials. This is his first Scottish to ride in. I don't know whether it's his first visit. Perhaps he'll tell us.
No, I've never been this far in Scotland before, so and I never realised quite. It doesn't sound the brochure what you're going to get at the Scottish, does it?
That's certainly not in the tourist board ones, but you saw some lovely scenery yesterday, and give us your comments about it.
Well, over the back of the place, it was like being on another planet. I don't know about the lovely scene. We got lost up the back there, and I thought we were never going to ever get out of it. But as you say, there's a lot of beautiful scenery. But when you're on a motorbike and there's just miles and miles of bog, it does become a tough job.
But it just shows, you know, a true motorcyclist. You made it around to the finish, and you're here getting togged up ready for today again.
Yeah, I was injured my back before I ever come here, and that was a sad thing. I'm struggling a little bit. I'm going to try to start off the day. Whether I can finish a day, I'm not sure. But I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I was in trouble yesterday, and the kickstart broke, and we couldn't start the bike, and 2 or 3 blokes grabbed the bike, push started it, got the thing going for me, and in the end it stalled again, right up the back. I don't know what it's called. And one lad had pulled out, he had a broken axle. So he took the bolt out of his oil tank and his air cleaner and gave it to me, and just got me on the way again. I couldn't believe it. He had a broken axle plus no bolt in his oil tank, and it's superb to meet these type of riders and people like yourself. It's a different style of motorcycle. I made my living out of racing motorbikes, and this is a superb deal.
So we're on to action from day 2, and we're at Cameron Hill this time. 2 sections here.
Not too difficult in openers. I would have thought, although it might have been slippery early on. But this whole Stig Carlson there looking fairly intently. Is that Derek Brooks?
Derek Brooks it was, yes.
Now that is a surprise. Derek's another, wherever I saw him during the day, he was riding very, very well.
Yes, well, I've been blamed for most 5s that have ever taken place in any event I've been to, so it was obviously the presence of the cameras that did for Derek on that occasion.
Malcolm Cocking now with a 350 Triumph Twin. Now Malcolm, at this stage, has got a complete motorcycle, but he bent the suspension unit severely, well, like a boomerang, and eventually it broke. His suspension is certainly working okay there, but Malcolm didn't give in, and in fact completed the trial with a very credible finish. So all credit to him.
Yes, I think we've got a picture that we'll see of that suspension unit, and I don't think you could have done it if you'd have taken a lump hammer to it.
No, but what I particularly admired was the fact that he still stuck with it, and although he had the excuse to retire, for want of a better word, Malcolm kept at it. Frank McMullen now with the Tiger Cub. Frank, a fan of the Bremer suit, possibly the first one-piece trial suit to really take off back in the 70s.
Number 130, Gordon Jackson, famous name.
But not the one that did 1961 6 days for one dab.
God, I'll test your knowledge. What day did he have that one dab then?
On the second day, I fancy.
All right then. Yes, it was. It was the Tuesday. I only know that because I looked it up a couple of days ago.
Len Hutty. Absolutely beautiful matchless here. 410cc, which was a mod that the factory did it themselves, took the 350s out to 410 and is now used by a few.
There's Malcolm Smith just dropping it into the beck there.
There's Neil Gaunt, his first classic outing. Barry Husband from down in Gloucestershire. Barry, a very forceful rider, and going through here with no problem.
Just 3 marks lost on the Friday. Would lose a few more today, but he would still end up in the top 10 overall. Looks like Steve Cox.
Yes, Steve Cox, another Midlander, with a C15 that's not over blessed with ground clearance, or certainly not with Steve on board.
A few weeks ago I was watching Steve ride the Red Marley Hill climb, and he was giving a Royal Enfield a heck of a pasting up this freak hill climb, but just give him a bike and 2 wheels and he's a happy man.
Now here's Stig, who lost more marks yesterday than he's lost in his previous 2 Classic Scottishes, but still very much in contention. Luciano Maltina from Milan. If that was swearing, I didn't understand it. Sandy Allen, another Scottish competitor. Are we back at
We're back at
Coles-na-Coan?
Coles-na-Coan, yeah. I'm Going to get that right before we finish.
This being used in the same format as it was in the first day.
Slightly different camera angle. Was it that I was just a bit...
There's that step,
yeah.
you see.
Thought we'd have a look at it from further down the hill, and that was my excuse. Eugenio Gatti, another Milan man.
I think it was the Brayford family observing on Colsnicone second day. Mrs. Brayford, son and daughter, all playing their part. Barry Rogers, BKR, with that 250 Royal Enfield bearing the registration mark 250RE. Barry, great enthusiast, been riding trials for the best part of 50 years, I would have thought. George Shorter, another cub, taking the avoiding the step, but making the next turn a bit tight. Here's Peter Salt. We saw Peter up here yesterday. Now let's see what he does with it this time. I'll bet he goes over the step. No, he didn't. Serves me right. Wiggling his way up there. Very good. Nick Draper, I would have thought. Yeah.
Yes, different line altogether from Nick there, wasn't it?
And Nick Mills. Nick feeling the heat a bit, I think. Got the jacket off. Those long legs there coming into use. Our last man, Andy Abraham, with the 500 Machi. When I say last man, the highest number 180. Not actually the last man on the day, because remember number 91 was first away. John Wilson, another Scottish competitor. There were in fact 25 Scotsmen in the entry list. And just another statistic, there were 32 of the entry were over 60 years old. As I said, I think Norman Pickles was the oldest, but George not too far away. But it's a fair percentage of old enthusiasts who, I'm delighted, are still able to take part in classic trials.
Graham Miller, 152. Oh, he looked to have the line just right. Robert Adams. And Roy Varty, that is.
Yeah.
Nick Whitlow, I think we saw him 2 or 3 times yesterday.
It's good on sections such as this where there's a choice of lines. Now we've moved on to what was the first section for the odd numbers on the day 2. We're on Lower Mamore.
Before the spectators have arrived, because it, well, there's a few there, but it got quite busy later on.
Well, it was nice and easy to get to. right beside the main road to Ballyhooish.
Because from there you'd got to, if you wanted to follow it, you had to go up to the Mamore Road, and that was quite a hike up there. And
Here we have Mike Endine. Mike over from the Channel Islands, but very much an engineer who's been involved with Formula One racing in great depth. Transmission man, I believe. Phil Barton, I think that was, with a Greaves. Another Greaves now, number 109, Gerald Speed. That Greaves is a James, I beg your pardon.
right then, next man through, rider 123. That's Andy Bamford again.
Pete Carson here, but yes, we're still on Lower Mamore. One, 3, 3, Ken O'Brien.
Yeah, somebody down there asked me if it was very far to go up to the other Mamore sections. I said, oh, just follow the path. Because I went up on the bike and they walked, and I did get a funny look a little bit later on, and it was the last time they were going to take any advice from me, apparently.
Not too surprised at that, Colin. It is a long way up, but wonderful when you get up there, as you well know.
Neil Gibson on a 250 dot.
From Lossiemouth, more fame for its airbase, I think. Alan Logue, Enfield just gone through, and that looks like, well, this is Tony Sullivan.
Yes, no mistaking him.
No. Mick Wilkinson, Villiers 80 engine Barnet.
Mick was fully employed on the 6 days on the final day, interviewing riders as they signed off in the centre of Fort William, with his very own droll style of inquiry.
I'm sure that would have been interesting.
Now we are at the section that's just called Mamore, which is on the Mamore Road. This is where riders then go down and do 3 or 4 groups of sections before coming back and doing a section and Bodak on the other side, which we will see shortly. And again, the view in the background there is just fantastic.
Very tricky section as well, Colin. The lower one of the two, that's for sure. In fact, I didn't see anybody clean it whilst I was there.
This is Rob Petit getting stuck, and there's our man on the 50cc Kreidler. I think it was a 50cc one.
Certainly wasn't very big, but made a lot of noise. This gentleman from Spain, an international businessman, I'm told, who flips around the world to leather factories which he owns, but certainly enjoying his relaxing holiday in the Highlands. Clive Dobson with that big 500T again. This is in that, looks like the higher one of the two sections.
So quite a number of people had made the walk.
Well, his advice to the spectators, it's the way to do it is take a car trip up to the Mamore Lodge Hotel, and then 50 pence or so car parking, and maybe £1, I don't know, and then from there it's a reasonably level walk to a lot of the sections, so very accessible for spectators.
yes, as you say, it's definitely the best option to park up there, having let an engine and some wheels do the hard bit for you. Right, so we've moved along the Mamore Road, and these sections could well be. Is this Bertha Burn?
Yeah, Butha Burn.
Butha Burn,
I think
right.
you could be right there. Yes, indeed. And these were a pair of new ones, as far as I'm aware. Not too bad at all. Obviously, could catch anybody for an odd dab quite easily, but not too severe.
Mike Wiley, number 79. To resort to a bit of lake power, John Moffat again.
That's a lovely looking matchless there. Most obviously using the program to who's that fella?
I do believe it's you again, Colin.
Yeah, it does. Look, got my feet up as well. I was going to say, referring to the program, what a superb program they produced this year as well. I think to be congratulated. I think that's John McCrink who built that. There's Scott flipping the cotton throw. He was feeling the heat somewhat, and discarded a jacket quite early on. There's Malcolm with the bent shocker, which turned his 350 Triumph into a rigid. There's Nick Draper.
Right,
we're back now at
Camasnamuick.
Camasnamuick, yes.
Round on the other side. That's the only trouble with sending two groups of riders in different directions. We'll have to flip about a little bit to keep up with both the odds and the even numbers.
Alan Owens from Liverpool. Can't think that Liverpool's produced an awful lot of trials riders. I'd possibly stand to be corrected there, but I certainly don't remember too many. John Palmer on another cotton. Philip Nelson from Carlisle.
Still trying to think about that Liverpool question. Clive Tompkinson.
Mick Mills now. His rather special C15. With the odds and evens going in different directions, it meant also that many observers were on duty for up between 5 and 6 hours on a section, and all credit to them. What a hardy band they are, and without them we wouldn't have our sport, of course.
It was Roy Barty, I think, and John Kendall just coming through now. Tidy as ever.
And talking of observers, there we go. Husband and wife team there, getting a well-deserved cup of tea. Certainly that's something that can never be beaten.
There's Ian Green just coming to grief. Back round onto Mamore. Time to see John Kendall through. Mark Worsfield. It's a new name to me. Making a nice job of the section there.
There were in fact 36 first timers to the 365 this year. So perhaps that's why it was a new name to you, Colin.
Yes, it's good though that perhaps one or two people have been trying for a number of years and finally achieved the ambition of getting a ride in Scotland.
And I bet having done it once, they'll want to come again.
Joel
Roland
Carroy.
Slicker. Hey, Joel Carroy,
Joel
I beg your
Carroy,
pardon,
this one,
number
yeah.
6, yes, Joel Carroy.
One mark yesterday, would lose 9 today on the Saturday, which would be good enough for a 4th place overall.
Yes, good result from Joel, who was in a hurry to get away afterwards to whip back home for the French elections. He and Jean-Paul Collou were getting back across the channel, feeling that the election was quite an important thing for them not to miss. Now we've moved section again now. I think we could be at Sliach. Number 138, Robin Powderly. There's Neil Gaunt with the Enfield.
Barry Husband taking a dab there. Oh, just confirming where we were. The instructions were, wherever you film, make sure we know which section it is. But
This is the top part of Sliach, which took the mark from Stig Carlson 2 years ago, and this time wasn't quite so severe, I don't think, although the end was nevertheless had to be treated with respect. Quite steep again. Someone in the section there, but is he going to find his way around that? Or claim it? He's claimed a bulk, I would think.
either that or he thought he was in the Scott trial and not the Scottish.
Nice looking matchless there. But
Number 180, Andy Abraham, going to result in a bit of hefty leg work.
very steep, that final slab to the ends card. Making easy work of it on a very standard rubber forked greaves.
Alistair MacArthur, that is. Nick Draper.
Nick has adapted well to the Scottish rockery. I think this would probably be about his third visit to the Pre-65.
This is Am Bodak.
That looks like Mike Nicholson. Yeah, Mike with a lovely AJS. He rides a rigid in the Samuel Miller British Bike Series. But that cambered slab at Am Bodak, there's just one spot to be.
That's that little bantam we saw at the Parc Fermé, belonging to Mark Daniel.
Although his rear end broke away there on the slab, he seemed to have got away with it and pulled himself on up.
Magical, if I'm not mistaken. What were they calling him at the presentation? Monarch of the Glen, wasn't it? I don't think we could dispute that.
Quite rightly so. 5 wins in the main Scottish, and now always been up there in the frame in the Classic, or has been for several years. But in fact, surprisingly, this is the first time that he stood alone on the podium. He's shared a win in the past on both James and on one occasion riding a 500 aerial. Here comes Dave Thorpe. Dave was going on to ride the main Scottish as well, together with his son Dan. Malcolm Simmons there, just watching the action.
Dan Thorpe there, ready with the refreshments. Dave would win the Ali Cameron Trophy, which was the best up to 200cc rider. But knowing Dave, he was probably quite disappointed he wasn't competing for the top award this year.
Yes, certainly a serious competitor. Graham Watkin with that AJ of his.
Eric Bucock, I think. You'll find, yes.
Flipped up there very easily then.
So definitely Richard Thorpe next. It was quite a rivalry between these two. They have quite a bit of fun at see who can be the better in the Yorkshire Classic events that they ride.
And that's what it's all about. There's a lot of personal battles that go on like that. And Pete Remington. Yes, personal battles between friends. And always accompanied by a little chuckle after each section. There are no professionals in this game, I'm pleased to say. Everybody riding just for the love of the sport, which for many of the riders has lasted a long, long time. Tony Calvert now. Tony, I predict, got to be a potential winner of this in the not too distant future. I think we're going to Stubcoy Erg now. Loose climb. And certainly if you've got your feet down, you've got a job to get it going again. Different ways of tackling this. Some hard charged it and second, and others picked their way up in low gear. I suppose it really depended on the individual motorcycle and perhaps the styles. Here's Peter Salt coming now. I suspect Peter's will be a slow, deliberate attempt. We've seen Peter on riding Greaves for so many years. It's quite strange to see him out on something different, but nevertheless still with a Villiers 2-stroke motor. Here he comes again. This is on the section which I think probably was the hardest of the lot, Corrie-Dhu. Two very, very difficult subs.
Even though the video tends to flatten things out, that looked quite steep towards that exit.
It's Nick Draper on here. He's done the first sub, now into the second sub. He's in trouble there. I think this is one of the sections that, according to spectators, it got worse as the day went on. It got slipperier. Here's John Kendall wrestling that 350 Triumph. Done well, got through the first sub, into the second, taking a couple of dabs there. but got going again. I think he would be pleased with that. 2 dabs for that is a fair all ride.
So 162 finding that not to his liking. That was Robert Adams. Right, back to Ambodak.
With Peter Carson.
That corner's tricky, isn't it? If you
Was that a dab? If it was a proper works dab. Couldn't quite see from the vantage point whether that was all he had, but certainly he made good use of it.
that slab, it's really quite nastily angled, isn't it? That if you don't get the is it the body lean right, you're in trouble.
Well, your wheel position, the margin for error would be about 10mm, I think.
What's that in pounds, shillings and pence, Colin?
I thought I might come for a knock there. We're talking pre-65. We certainly should be talking in feet and inches, shouldn't we? So in that case, I'll say that there's half an inch margin. Eric Atkinson on a quite an original looking Greaves. And we're back at Pipeline now. Don't think there were quite as many spectators there on the second day as the first, but it is a fair old walk from Kinlochleven up there, but a very pleasant walk and worth it when you get there. Is that Ken O'Brien?
It
I
is,
think
yes.
Ken probably got the award for most photographed man of the weekend, or he and Peter Carson, I would have thought. But well done, Ken. Still keeping going. They're now up into the very, very steep third sub. Don't know whether this was at a stage where his companion Tony Sullivan was issuing advice, but certainly Sully, having had machine trouble, retired, and he was giving some good advice as to what line to take at the top.
This is Grant Miller coming through next.
There's what you'd call a traditional view of Pipeline, those massive pipes that used to take the water down to the aluminium works. There's Mike Ransom with the Barnet that took him to third place in 1962, I think it was.
Oh, that was cruel.
I think he just got stuck there. He couldn't go one way or the other. Ah, Mick Andrews.
Well, as we said, every adjective in the book has been levelled with this man in Scotland over the years, and he thoroughly deserved every, what shall I say, word of praise it could. It's a superb ride.
The thing is, it never looks in doubt, does it? It's
I rather think that was Jenny, Arthur Browning's sister, giving some advice there.
yes, you're correct in that, and I think Arthur Browning was road racing at Mallory Park on the Bank Holiday Monday. I think they were going down to watch him down there. I've not seen Arthur on a road race machine, but if he's anything like he is on an off-road machine, it would be entertaining stuff.
He'll be competitive, whatever he does. Another great all-rounder. And it would be nice to see Arthur back in Scotland on a trials bike again, because he was no mean trials rider either, was he, Colin?
He certainly wasn't, no. That's Bob McKee, who I think stopped at the same place he was telling me on both days, but he keeps coming back from Newtonards in Northern Ireland to ride the Pre-65 and always enjoys his trip over.
Here's that little Zundat with George Gillet. 200cc, a bike similar to this, won the European Trials Championship when it was first came in. Gustav Frank would have been, excuse me, would have been the pilot in those days, but a bike very similar to that.
Norman Pickles. Is it? Yeah, it's gone as far as it's going for today. It's giving it the evil. Thought he was going to claim a bulk and want another rerun at that stage, but obviously thought better of it. So we're doing all three subs at Pipeline, Colin, for 2 days on the trot, but did they change very much between one day and the other?
Not a lot really. I think possibly the passage of best part of 400 motorcycles up there did give a bit more of a line, but it was a bit greasy at the top, so no, it was still a hill that one would be pleased about if you kept a clean sheet. It's been used every year in the Scottish of some form since about 1965, I believe, so it's a long time.
But it wasn't a section that was used pre-65, was it?
No, that's correct. But then the hills around Kinlochleven in general, Loch Isle Path and Greymare's Ridge and so on, which incidentally, Greymare's Ridge, the top sub, the famous sub, was used this year, but under the banner of Jackson's, and in fact Gordon Jackson was up there on Saturday watching the action. Must have brought back a lot of wonderful memories for him. And in fact it's a fitting tribute from the organisers to name that part of the hill Jackson's.
There's Phil Barton just coming to a halt. It's amazing really, isn't it, that how having one single dab on a ride on a trials bike and it's still being talked about so many years later.
It is amazing. Well, there's Andy Johnson, our hard-working secretary to the event. Andy, like I say, his Enfield being ridden by Neil Gaughan. Carl Bancroft, looks like to me.
Yes, indeed.
But there's nowhere else in the UK where you can find a hill, such a natural hill as this. There's just nothing quite to compare with it.
You'd think over the years that you might have churned all the rocks away and just have a path, but each year it fills in again, doesn't it?
It's surprising. A few of us took a trip up there on the Thursday, and it really looked severe then. Certainly wouldn't wanted to be first man up.
Graham Andrews is fighting his cub to try and get to the top. But that's gone as far as it's going. Pat Coughlin. He's decided that sitting down and legging it is going to get him there, and it's worked.
The audience very appreciative of all good attempts, not necessarily clean, but tremendous encouragement, and watched with so much enthusiasm. You know, you didn't see anybody dozing off. It was an enthusiastic audience all the way through.
should be Chris Bradley.
Well, Chris has changed the style of his bike considerably. Andy Bamford. Andy recording a clean. Oh, that'll make his weekend.
So at that point I was beginning to think, shall I stand my ground or shall I take one pace backwards? But if you took one pace backwards, you've got an 8-foot drop behind you, so I trusted him. Tom Anderson.
I think the lead into the third sub this time was more defined than it has been in previous years. There's been, you know, 2 or possibly 3 different lines into that top sub previously, but this time there seemed to be only one line over on the far right that was the choice of virtually everyone, really.
Alex Carmichael. So at that point you're thinking, I hope the tank hasn't gone in on the left hand side.
Yes, Mick Grant had a battle scar on his aerial from a year or 2 ago there. He was carrying the pipeline battle scar for some considerable time after.
Here's Mark Daniel, who is just about to take a real nasty tumble.
As you said earlier, Colin, that's some 8 or 10 feet down over that side there. But he seems to be all okay.
He was okay and got a round of applause, and I actually spoke to him afterwards and he was quite pleased I'd got it on film, so we've included it for you, Mark.
There's Mike Nicholson again.
Oh, this is a cracking ride from Brian Irwin.
It is a cracking ride.
And I just decided at that point that that was close enough and went back down to the finish. Back to Schoolhouse and exchange those tails.
Clive Tompkinson handing in his numbers there.
So we conclude our look at the 2002 Scottish Pre-65 trial. Colin Dommett, once again, thank you very much for your excellent interpretation of what went on around Kinlochleven this year.
Well, thank you, Colin. It's a pleasure to be part of the Scottish, and God willing and entry acceptance, hope to be back there again next year.
We leave you with the results of the Pre-65 Scottish Trial 2002. Many thanks to the Edinburgh and District Motorcycle Club for allowing us to film this classic Pre-65 event.